Okay, you can start.
Okay, thank you. Welcome to our fourth Fireside chat sessions on Shin Buddhism in the West and beyond. Today's theme is on affliction. My name is Ryoei Nanjo, and I am a member of the steering committee. A few items of importance before we begin today's Fireside chat. Number one, a questionnaire link has been sent to you. Please do your best to send in your responses within 2 weeks. Also, as this is an informal fireside chat, it is important you keep your video screen on so we can share the session with one another in person, even if it is virtual. And please change your display name as such last name, first name. Finally, if you will not be able to attend the January session, please send an email ahead of time letting us know. We will be grateful if you take a moment to do that. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Kenneth Tanaka, who will be serving as our instructor and discussion leader for our sessions. Dr. Tanaka, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. All right, we would like to start our session for December. We're 1 week earlier than normal. And before we forget, wishing you all the best during the holidays. Of course, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, and peaceful Bodhi Day. So at least we get the three religions in there. Okay, so Sharon Sasaki will be our layperson speaker, and she is affiliated with the San Diego Buddhist Temple, and she'll tell us more about herself in the first 5 minutes. So, can you, Sharon? Floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you, Tanaka Sensei and the steering committee for this opportunity. I'm nervous but I will do my best today. Thank you. So as far as a biography, I'm a minister's kid. From ages 4 to 18, I grew up in the parsonage of the Mountain View Buddhist Temple. My father, who passed away in March, is Reverend Laverne Sasaki. My father was kind of always out and busy, being a minister. And so our mother, my mom took care of us 5 kids. Growing up, we didn't really discuss Buddhism around the dinner table, but we did do a daily Omairi service, which is in front of our home shrine, Obutsudan. We would chant Jusei Ge before dinner, followed by recitation of the 3 treasures and singing a song. My dad particularly liked Buddha Loves You and Zippity Doodle. But growing up, I, of course, attended Dharma school, Sunday school, and various youth activities at the temple. I could say that, sadly, I feel like I took Buddhism for granted. I agreed with what I had always learned, and it actually always seemed like common sense to me, most of what I learned. I never really questioned it very much. And I also never really, what you might say, took it personally. And the teachings have always seemed more in my head than in my heart. I've had a pretty easy and comfortable life. Even with a father as a minister and a mom who was mainly a stay-at-home mom for most of my childhood, we never felt poor or lacking in material things. At the same time, I always felt kind of socially awkward and with some angst or darkness inside. And I've always kind of leaned toward, I think, being a pessimist. My 5th grade teacher told me that, and I still remember her calling me kind of a pessimist. In 1996, I moved to San Diego and met my husband, Robert. I became active at the Buddhist Temple of San Diego, mainly in Dharma school, because my 2 daughters grew up attending Dharma school. And one aspect of being part of a BCA temple is that I truly feel at home at every sister temple in the BCA that I've attended, and that's very comforting. And I was inspired at the BTSD by Reverend Kenji Akahoshi and his wife Karen, particularly their sensibility as activists for social justice, and also how Kenji Sensei teaches the Buddha Dharma in a way that resonates with newcomers to Buddhism and teaching from the perspective of a scientist. So I kind of grew up as a biochemistry, biotechnology person in my regular work career. And Reverend Kenji's guidance got me and encouragement got me started as a minister's assistant in 2021. And I'm really grateful for that. I've taken the Jodo Shinshu correspondence course and have now completed 5 courses at the Institute of Buddhist Studies in the Certificate of Shin Buddhist Studies program. And I could say that what I've learned so far has been kind of mind-blowing, and I would highly recommend that for people who are interested in learning more about Shin Buddhism. And helping the minister's assistant team at Buddhist Temple San Diego has also been an incredibly learning and rewarding experience, even though I still feel kind of uncomfortable or unworthy to wear a minister's assistant's robe and to be in the onaijin. It's just been quite an experience. So I'm very thankful for that. So that's my bio.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Good to hear that. Our first question to you is, which of the afflictions or blind passions, which by the way is the theme of this session. So in Japanese it's bonno, but we're using the English translation afflictions or blind passions. In Shin Buddhism, there's a tendency to emphasize blind passions, which divided into 3 are the 3 poisons of greed, anger/hatred, and stupidity/ignorance. So which of them affect you the most, Sharon?
Oh,
all of them.
yeah, really. When you first asked me about my interest in doing this, doing one about afflictions and imperfections, blind passions definitely resonated with me. So that's why I'm on this topic. So I would say that selfishness is definitely one of my afflictions. Growing up, I feel like I always prioritized head over heart, I would say, which is probably both my innate sensibility as well as kind of environmental and cultural values growing up in America, trying to get ahead and compete with others. I've always kind of prized efficiency and productivity. And so I don't think I've been a very thoughtful person toward other people. And I also don't think I'm a very good listener. And I also have a bad tendency of interrupting people, which I'm really trying to not do. So yeah, so that's kind of shows kind of my selfish nature, as well as not being a natural giving person. I remember that my college roommate would call people either givers or takers. And then when she talked to me, she said, "Oh, but you're neither." So meaning that I just kind of try to take care of myself and not, ask for anything from anybody or necessarily give either. So that's, to me kind of sad. And then the other aspect is stupidity or ignorance as far as affliction. One recent podcast I was listening to, they talked about gratitude as a feeling of not deserving what you're receiving. And that really resonated with me. I haven't heard it described that way. And I could say that I have had an easy life, but I also feel like I haven't been grateful and have taken things for granted. And also realize that I don't deserve what I've received in life. And I also wanted to say that I feel that in Namo Amida Butsu, there's an aspect of shame or repentance for my own selfishness, but I haven't actually come to truly repent my own selfishness. And then my other aspect of stupidity is kind of acting inauthentically or wearing a mask. I have two daughters that are Gen Z, and they're very in tune to people who are kind of fake or phony. And sometimes I feel that I am that way. And I have also felt that other people seem to be more kind, pure, and giving. So I try to act like I am. I'm, I feel like I'm very concerned about what other people think, and also avoid exposing my own vulnerability. So those are some of my kleshas or imperfections. And of course, it's just the tip of the iceberg, in that my afflictions or blind passions are blind to me, or most of them are. So what I know is just, a very tiny amount of what I know I have.
Okay, well, those are a lot. And I'm sure that even though it's a lot, many of us can relate to you about that we are, selfish or self-centered. So selfishness within the three blind passions of greed, anger, and stupidity, are you putting that in the realm of greed or anger? Or because you later talked about your ignorance, but uh, how would you see that? Uh,
Yeah, so I would definitely call my selfishness probably the greed aspect, and then kind of everything's under the umbrella of ignorance, and just me, not realizing, true gratitude,
yeah.
and what I've received.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry for interrupting. When you were talking about selfishness, I thought maybe, as I thought about it, it's very interesting. As I thought about it, maybe more in the realm of ignorance, in that you're selfish because you don't realize your interconnectedness with others. That, and uh, so with that outlook in life, then the others follow. So um, perhaps yeah, I think your discussion helped me to try to think about where that selfishness, where we place that within the three poisons. And I would think that uh, there is an insight called uh, Satkaya Drishti in Sanskrit, means attachment to yourself, basically. And it's kind of a perception that we have. And that is a first level of awakening that you overcome. And actually in Shinjin, you kind of overcome that. You understand that you are much more interconnected. You're not isolated. And so you, at least in your head, we have a better understanding. And that kind of changes the way we are in terms of greed and hatred, although it won't completely go away, as we know. But it's the first mark. So okay, thank you for that. Maybe we can come back. I mean, the next one is is also related. So when is Shinran, or was Shinran too harsh on himself when he said, "I'm so full of blind passions"? What do you think? Because he's known for his deep self-reflection, and actually, when you were talking about all your quote unquote faults or blind passions, I think you are in line with Shinran. So anyway, could you comment on that?
So yes, Sensei, I would say that whether Shinran was too harsh on himself, I would answer yes and no. So objectively, I think, yes, he's too hard on himself because I feel like human afflictions are kind of hardwired into our DNA as human beings due to our instincts to survive. So in that way, I would say that, you know, maybe I've given myself too much of a pass for that same exact reason. But so in that way, I would say that's too harsh. But then from a religious standpoint, as an inspiration to me, no, that Shinran is comparing himself to the highest level, which is the Buddha. And he's an example of someone, for me, who appears to be perfect from, you know, from outside people. But so even someone like that can feel like they have darkness or afflictions on the inside. And so that gives me hope for myself.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that clarification is important in that he's not comparing himself to his next door neighbor or his friends. He's comparing himself to the Buddha because that's what he was aspiring for. So compared to the Buddha, he is full of, you know, the blind passions. And but also I think he's very honest. He was very honest to himself and eventually to others. He talked about his, you know, his dark side, so to speak, but that really made him much more human in many ways. Yeah. So, um, do you think that you talked a lot about your blind passions? Do you think that was made easier because you're a Shin Buddhist?
Yeah, I think that I, you know, certainly resonate with the idea of blind passions and afflictions and human ego centeredness. So yeah, I think that, you know, growing up as a Shin Buddhist has kind of always had me feel that way.
Yeah, yeah. I at least I can speak for myself that it's easier for me to see and accept my shadows, my limitations, and one of the reasons that inspired me, or the reason why I took interest in Shinran, was that he was different from many of the kind of religious leaders that I had heard when I was growing up, you know, because you have a lot of televangelists, you know, saying, you know, I am the answer. I speak essentially, I'm speak for God, and but uh, you find often how many televangelists have really went against what they were saying and got caught doing, you know, things other than what they, you know, aspired to say and do. Um, I think that the clarity of his, you know, honesty really resonated with me at least. Okay, thanks. And okay, how about the next question? How do the afflictions or blind passions affect my ability to become fully enlightened in this life? That's us, yeah.
Yeah, so for that, I don't believe that I will be fully enlightened in this life. My understanding is that Shinran Shonin's awakening was not what you'd call full enlightenment, but the experience of Shinjin as the stage of non-retrogression, often described as being grasped, never to be abandoned by Amida Buddha. As a Jodo Shinshu Buddhist, I believe that the three poisons, greed, anger, and delusion, will stay with us while we're living as human beings. But I also believe that attainment of Shinjin is possible in this life. I think that what I would call the hardness of my head and heart negatively affects my ability to attain Shinjin. And I think that this hardening is a defense mechanism for myself. That's, in my DNA, as well as the result of my environment. That's helped me just get by day to day in our kind of tough competitive world. In my work, I was a manager, and I would never kind of get emotional or cry at work. It's just kind of something I always kind of would never allow myself to do or feel. So I feel like I need to work on opening my heart to vulnerability, hear with greater sensitivity, listen more deeply, and open my eyes, because I do feel like the working of Amida Buddha is dynamic and working all around me. And I want to, be able to see that in an increasing, way throughout my life. And which would also probably make me increasingly aware of my own foolishness and self-centeredness. So for me, unmasking and disarming myself would mean seeing more of my self-protective ego. And then the other aspect I wanted to, a learning from my father, were two Japanese terms that I could relate with, which are what he called Nushin no Junen, as the direct way of faith by learning from teachers, self-reflection, which is the Nembutsu life given to me, and what he called Gyakuen as the indirect approach to entering the Nembutsu, which may come as I grow in life in maturity, and possibly even with greater, experience of hardship.
Okay, so I think the point that you made earlier needs to be emphasized. In Shin Buddhism, we can attain Shinjin, which is a form of awakening or enlightenment, but not a full awakening, not a full enlightenment, because full enlightenment would mean that we would have no afflictions. Afflictions will not arise. So, but Shinjin is a level at which you have a different view of the world, a sense of interconnectedness, a sense that you are fundamentally fine just as you are. And that is good enough for me in this life. And okay, let's go to the next question. And Shinran says that our afflictions continue to emerge throughout our lives, but can we lessen their negative impact in our daily lives? So in other words, the blind passions will emerge, but does that mean we just leave it at that? So the question is, can we lessen any of the negative impact of that?
So my answer is yes. Since I started studying Buddhism more in the last 2.5 years, just being in the setting of Dharma teachers and Dharma friends, I feel like they've really inspired me, and being involved in our Sangha at the temple has made me try harder to be more patient and trying to be a better listener. And also just, I'm still not very natural at giving, but I'm working on it. So I don't, I think that even though I won't attain Shinjin through self-power practices, through self-effort, I can become a more kind person to others as well as myself. And I'm also inspired by teachers who display ease with themselves and humanness, like Tanaka Sensei. So I want to learn more about the concept of jinen in Jodo Shinshu, which is often translated as naturalness. And I feel like Shin Buddhists live with this naturalness, acting the same whether they're at home by themselves or with others, not having to put on a mask, comfortable in their own skin. And I feel like studying Jodo Shinshu is like shining a mirror on myself, and seeing more of my own greed and ignorance motivates me to try to be more kind and understanding to people around me. So as I grow and mature, I think exposing vulnerability is also what opens people's hearts. And I could say that I've had glimmers of feeling the Nembutsu, which for me means letting my guard down and opening my heart, whether it's moments of chanting or singing gathas, talking in front of people and feeling accepted. And also times that I feel my dad's smiling face. He passed away in March, and those are the times that I could say I feel Namo Amida Butsu.
Okay, thank you. Um, so, so you, I think one of the things you said was by studying Buddhism, coming in touch with various teachers, that it's like seeing yourself in the mirror. You see yourself more. You see yourself better, and that enables you to be, as you were saying, be more patient, listen to others. And so I think that definitely it has an impact. And there's a tendency in Shin Buddhism of kind of giving up our hands and say, oh, we're passion-filled, ordinary beings, and just be saved by Amida. But that is fine on one level, but I think that there needs to be more effort, not power, self-power, but self-effort to reflect on ourselves and to be more patient, listen to others. And and I think one of the things I have found is that I've been able to better gauge my thoughts. So when someone says something that is irritating, when I was younger, I would kind of react react in a negative way. But just be patient, and actually a lot of times more serious incidences where you feel that passion, the emotion that's very strong, and you feel that's so real, that it's reality. But Buddhism teaches, everything changes, everything's changing. So even that emotion will go away. So in a few minutes, it's gone. And so, and you think, oh, good thing I didn't react to it. I didn't hang on to it and react negatively. And that comes with, reciting the Nembutsu. Well, as you know, I do a little bit of just quiet sitting. You can call it mindfulness. It doesn't have to be very extensive, just sitting, and that helps you to kind of be more sensitive to what's going on within. I think a lot of people, especially in the West, we're always looking outward, not as self-reflective. And and so the key is to be aware of your minds and thoughts, and be able to catch it when it's uh, could be could hurt others negatively, and hurt yourself too. Okay, so thank you. So we can even though we're passion-filled beings, we can lessen. And I think as Sharon, you talked about many people that you know, and they have been able to lessen the negative impacts. Okay, so the last question. So in your view, how are afflictions or blind passions in Buddhism different from sin in Christianity?
I grew up as a Buddhist minister's kid, and I'm not very knowledgeable about Christianity. But what I do, my understanding is there's more of a sense of judgment, I would say, in Christianity. That's the sense I get. And whereas in Jodo Shinshu, the message that we continually hear is acceptance as we are. So I really appreciate that aspect of Shin Buddhism. And I recently was reading in a book about Jodo Shinshu that the sense of evil in Jodo Shinshu is very different from sin in Christianity, in that, according to Christian thought, man is born in sin. However, in Jodo Shinshu, the sense of imperfection or evil develops only as we strive to improve ourselves. As I had mentioned earlier, Shinran considered himself deplorable because he was comparing himself to the highest standard Buddha. And realizing Amida Buddha's compassion goes hand in hand with realizing my own inability to unselfishly do good for others, which you might call evil. So to me, that's kind of how some of the evil in Jodo Shinshu is different from what I understand to be sin.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Well, I try not to uh, try to refrain from comparing simply, and so but I think one thing I can say is kind of reinforcing what you said earlier, Sharon, is that as far as Shinran goes, his sense of blind passion or imperfection comes from after he made enormous effort to reach the highest goal, the highest standard. So he tried his best, and that gap is what he called imperfections or blind passions. He came to realize that. And so he made an enormous effort. I think on the other hand, I've heard my Christian friends say that sin has many, meaning, and it's multifaceted. But one thing that I recall him saying is that not to take interest in the teachings itself is a sin, or turning away from God is a sin. I think you can say in Buddhism that is not, blind passion in a sense. That if people don't take interest in the Dharma, we just have to be patient and wait for them to come around. But we wouldn't call that blind passion. And so again, in going back to the earlier point that Shinran made a concerted effort. It wasn't that he turned away from Dharma. He really tried his best, and he came to realize that he could not reach that same level. And so that's the sense of blind passion. And by the way, you brought up the point of evil. I personally don't like it too much. I know, there are reasons why that should be in the Shin teachings, because I don't like it because it can be misunderstood. But we have to understand, like as you were saying, that the word evil is to point out that gap between the ideal and where I am. So it's in a spiritual sense, not in a um, well, definitely legal sense. Not evil. Shinran didn't commit a crime, and I don't think it's even in an ethical sense. He was a decent person, but it's in a spiritual sense of being evil, and that of meaning that he found a gap between himself and what he was aspiring for. Okay, thank you. This completes the questions that. So I hope that all of you have thought about the questions, and again, there is no one answer. Certainly don't listen to what I'm saying. This is my perception, and of course listen to Shinran and to the Buddha, but please come up with your own appreciation and understanding of all these questions. Okay, we're open for Q&A, so we have about a little over 10 minutes. Are is Igor here today? And I hope you can write it in chat, send it in through chat.
I believe Igor is going for his Tokudo right now.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Well, that's what I thought, but
Mhm.
he never mentioned it to us. I knew he was going to. Okay,
Yeah.
well, so you can still send it in chat. Okay, Jennifer.
Thing. So thank you, Sharon. That was good. And I just want to say that I think you're really hard on yourself. And I think you're super normal. Everything you said is like all of us. But it's good to know yourself, right? That way. But also, I hope you know the yourself, like all the things we think we need to be humble and not find things that we can praise. So, to like toot our own horn and wave our own flag. But I think that's important to do too, because you probably do see that in others and you toot their horn and wave their flags, and you're a person just like them. So remember to pat yourself on the back and toot your horn and wave your flag, because you're doing awesome. I just want to really thank you for being so open and honest and vulnerable with us today, because things you were saying you're not able to do, you just poured it all out there, and you absolutely did every one of them with us. So thank you for that very much.
Yeah.
I think you're awesome. I think you're doing great.
All right.
We have,
Okay,
Christopher.
Oh, okay. Well, Christopher has his hand up.
Yes, thank you. I agree with you, Jen. And I'm really interested in, I just like emotional maturation that you're describing, Sharon, in terms of vulnerability and how that relates to Shin practice. I really appreciate that discussion. I feel like I'm just starting in a similar way, just starting to get vulnerable in life and just through suffering, basically. But my question to you is early on, you mentioned your experience of the certificate of Shin studies at IBS was mind-blowing, and without requesting a full account of that, I'd love to hear a bit about what was mind-blowing for you.
Yeah, so it's just learning on a I guess just a deeper level. I feel like I've really taking these different classes in Jodo Shinshu. It's so much about looking into yourself and realizing, things like your afflictions, and trying to wrap your head around Amida Buddha, the Nembutsu, the Pure Land, and what it means. And I can't say that I am I'm still absolutely learning, but I feel like learning what those concepts or what that means, and taking it increasingly personally when you are relating Shinran Shonin's experience. So I think that's been what's been mind-blowing, is the starting to get a glimmer of, you know, what the meaning of Nembutsu is, and Amida Buddha's compassion. And yeah, that's, to me, I think that's what is mind-blowing.
Okay, Christopher, you have any?
No, thank you very much.
Okay, yeah, so please check into any of the courses that are available through IBS and Buddhist Education Committee and through your temples. You know, there's so much available now, and take advantage of it. Okay, did someone say something? There's a chat question.
Yes, there is. This is from Kemi. Could you please comment on how your upbringing, or presume to know Shinran's mind at Mount Hiei or anywhere else during his life?
You just combine the two people's questions.
Oh,
Okay,
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Yeah, it just popped up while. Sorry. From Kemi, yeah. Could you comment on how your upbringing or your more recent studies have shaped your daily practices?
Oh, thank you for that question. So actually, there's a good combination there. I mentioned the Almighty services we would do at home. And now I've been starting to do that at home here. Just, you know, doing the chanting of Shoshinge. I try to do it daily. And as a practice, I feel like part of like Nembutsu is thinking on the Buddha, thinking, thinking itadakimasu, thinking, when I'm eating. So being more grateful. So I would say that that's something from my upbringing that continues to my practice today. And just working on being, my recent studies has caused me, I think, to just, as well as my experience as a minister's assistant has made me just try to be a more kind and gentle person to the people around me. So I think that's been my practice of just trying to just be better, just be feel more compassion and connected to the Buddha. So yeah.
Sharon, you just said kind and gentle. That sounds like a golden chain. and
Yes.
yeah, it's yeah, I find myself saying that too, and by the way, I've been sharing golden chain in Japan, and a lot of people in Japan like it. And so anyway, okay, did both questions get answered?
Yeah, we have another one from Reverend Kobata. How can we presume to know Shinran's mind at Mount Hiei or anywhere else during his life?
Wow. So that's a question that that's not something I can presume to know. And all I can go by is readings and what I've learned. So really knowing Shinran's mind, that's a hard one.
Yeah, well, of course, I agree with you that we can never know Shinran objectively or perfectly, but we can, to the best of our ability, we try to understand him based on our experience, and that's all we can do. We have 800 years of gap, and we live in a different time. He was a different person, but to the best of our ability, we use him as a model to look at ourselves. And that's how I see it. So Reverend Kubata, you want to say something about that?
You're on mute.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I got it now, I think.
You got it now.
Am I?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm using Tabitha's laptop, so I don't know where things are. It's all in Japanese, but
okay.
Yeah. Well, actually, I wasn't directing it to Sharon specifically. It was just a general question that always occurs to me. You know, we talk about Saint Shinran. Yeah, well, we call him a saint to us, but to what extent? And, you know, as far as using the term evil, you know, that's contextual.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's hard to really determine, you know, all the vocabulary, all the language we use in reference to him and around him. And so that was the general question that just pops up into my mind often.
Yeah.
So I was just sharing that in
Thank
general.
you. Yeah. I think that is a concern, you know, in this kind of endeavor. We're trying to base our spiritual lives on a particular figure or set of teachings, and so we have to always, as you say, be, you know, contextual, and that's why I was a little bit opposed to the use of evil freely in our context, because it was couched in a particular context by Shinran in his own time. And so, okay, I think that concern affects us, you know, in all of our, you know, efforts to understand the teachings. Okay, Paul, I'm sorry, we're kind of out of time, so maybe you can send it in chat, or maybe in the second half. Okay, so we're so pleased to have Reverend Dr. Takashi Miyaji with us from my old temple where I served many years ago. And so at the Hondo, is my picture still there? Photo of all the past ministers?
Yes, it's still there. Yep,
Yeah.
yep.
Well, it's the only temple in the BCA where my photo will be on the wall. And so that's my one attachment. Anyway, okay, Reverend Miyaji, talk about yourself. 5 minutes.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much for having me, inviting me, and I too am pretty nervous. I'm for Sunday service, I'm used to dealing with
You're kidding me, aren't you? I mean,
well, I'm used to dealing with like maybe 5 or 10 people, but here I see there's like 60 some odd people, so I better stay on top of on topic and things. But yeah, just to introduce myself, I grew up in Los Angeles, California, and I too, like Sharon, am a minister's kid, preacher's kid, and so my parents, my father was a Kaikyoshi minister, and he actually currently is still serving, technically speaking, at the Gardena Buddhist Temple, alongside my wife. Not my wife. My that was a little bit of a Freudian slip there. That was my referring to my mom. My mom and my father are both working at the Gardena Buddhist church, and so they've been there for about maybe 10 years or so. But my father was a Kaikyoshi for about a good, almost, I want to say 40 years or so. My uncle, Akio Miyaji, also was a Kaikyoshi minister. My other uncle, Fumio Miyaji, was a Kaikyoshi minister over at Canada for a small period of time. And my father's side goes back generations in terms of ministers, and my mom's side too as well. So it's kind of in the blood, so to speak. And it's we've been kind of in this tradition for all this time. However, I do want to point out though that my father never forced me to do this. And actually, technically speaking, in the Japanese standards, I'm the second son, so it wouldn't come to me anyway, even if my dad did follow that rule. But he kind of allotted the same kind of freedom that was given to him, which was to say that we need to figure out our own lives and our own paths in this life. And so, ironically enough, that's what prompted me to jump back in, I think, back into the ministry in Buddhism. And so, I think the main kind of impetus into going into this profession was probably my grandparents passing away. We lived together in the same household, and they had, they were ji-chan, ba-chan, regular grandpa, grandma. But the succession of their deaths, I think, kind of had a profound impact on my life. And so from there, I started really thinking about this issue of death. And I had a fear of it. And the concept of death we really kind of struck me, and I never really got over that. And so going into college, then I started thinking maybe I should, broaden my horizons and maybe I'll get some answers there. So I majored in philosophy. And the one thing I learned about philosophy was that there are no answers, and that the more I studied, the more in circles I felt like I was going with no resolution to any of the problems that I had. As a matter of fact, it felt like everybody was trying to one up each other and sound like they were smarter than the other and try to beat each other in some kind of debate. So conversations would get heated in class many times. It was just not a good atmosphere. And I did not feel that I didn't feel welcome. I didn't feel comfortable. And so I was at a real kind of a deadlock there. And it was only after college that I started, I was thinking to myself, hey, maybe I should talk to my dad about some of this stuff. And then so we started having conversations. And the more I spoke with him, the more I started to realize there really is something to this religion that is very comforting. And I don't know if that's because of the background that I had, the karmic background that I've seen up until this point. I mean, I'm sure some of it was that, but a lot of it was, me going through that process of kind of thinking about this religion. And first of all, am I even interested in being a part of this religion, let alone choosing this as a profession? And so, after many kind of conversations, and I eventually decided to study at the Institute of Buddhist Studies. So I was there, and I got my master's degree there, and then wanted to further my studies. So then I went to Japan and then studied Jodo Shinshu in Japanese, and I was there for about a good 8 years or so. And then recently I got assigned to the Tacoma Buddhist Temple, which is in Washington State, just south of Seattle. And then after there, I got reassigned to here in Southern Alameda County, which is in Union City, California. So that's basically my life story there.
Okay, thank you. You didn't talk about your grandfather very much, but I don't know if you were there before the session. I was talking about him as
Partway through, yeah.
one of my main teachers, along with Reverend Sasaki. And but anyway, so
Okay.
let's go to the first question. Which of the afflictions or blind passions affect you the most?
Yeah, I liked Sharon's answers, and I think a lot of my answers are basically her answers. They're just piggybacking off of that. But the one thing that kind of struck me was, well, I could give you examples of each of them, but they all do fall under the umbrella of ignorance, as Sharon mentioned. And the first one that I noticed was a couple weeks ago. I was on the road, and then I was on the first lane. I was in the fastest lane on the freeway. And then a guy comes up to me right behind me and starts flashing his high beams, right? Telling me to go faster because I guess I wasn't going fast enough. In California, not going fast enough is like 75 miles an hour or so. And so this person was prompting me to go faster. And then I was like, and I have to keep a safe distance with the car in front of me. So, in my head, I'm thinking, how much faster am I supposed to be going here? I'm going to run into the guy in front of me. There's only so much I can do. I can't explain this to the person in front and behind me, of course. And so this person then proceeds to then cut me off. And I get really mad at this, right? I get really mad and I high beam the guy and it's just a fit of rage. And so it dawned on me that it's just a drop of a hat that my emotions can go from 0 to 60, or it could just change all of a sudden. I can be going from having a bad day to having a good day, and then a good day to having a bad day, or and that just kind of continues on. And so that's something that I've sensed. Another one in terms of greed is this whole idea of this keeping up with the Joneses. I think I feel very much so. I look at, where I'm at in my life at this age in my life, and I look at my peers and I compare myself with others. Where am I at in this life, and the worldly possessions that I have, and gauging that, where do I live, in what part of town, and these kinds of things, they matter to me. And that's another sense that I get of this greed, right? That I feel very much at heart too as well. And then I think another thing that kind of gets overlooked at times, but is something that I identify with Shinran with, which I won't go into too much detail here, but is sexual desire. Shinran Shonin had problems with the monastic lifestyle in terms of addressing and overcoming his sexual desire. And that's his honesty there. I mean, he didn't write that anywhere in his books or in his writings, but it's alluded to, and that struggle, I think, is there. In one of the writings, he does talk about his dream visions, we call them, or we translate in English, or muso or mukoku. And there's one in which he talks about being at Rokkakudo, where it's basically a temple, and he's kind of confined himself there for 100 days. And on the 95th day, through this thinking about where he's going to go in his life, because he just come down from Mount Hiei, and he's basically given up his priest lifestyle. And during this time, he thinks, he has this dream vision in which Kannon Bodhisattva, or Avalokiteshvara, appears to him and says, "I will take on the form of a woman if that's what is needed, and you can fulfill your desires with me." Is the dream vision that he has, and he writes this, right, and this is recorded, and so I think that from there we can get a glimpse into the emotions, the array of emotions that he struggled with. And I think that the monastic lifestyle was unrealistic to him because it was suppressing his human emotions. And I think that that's something that he kind of realized also as well. And it's something that I sense too myself, right, and living this life as a human being. And so I think that I can go on and on and on about this,
Yeah.
but these are the things that I feel genuinely. Yeah. Mhm.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think that the last point that you made really contributes to Shinshu being very distinct or even unique among the Buddhist schools.
Mhm,
So,
mhm.
okay, we need to go to the second one. Was Shinran too harsh on himself when he said, "I'm so full of blind passions"?
Yeah, and so my answer to this one would be no. In that he the areas where he's most honest with himself. For example, there's a wasan, or these hymns that he's composed, and one of them is the Hitan Jukkaisan, where he kind of confesses his kind of in this lack of being genuine, and dishonesty and these kinds of things. And when I read that those are the parts that I identify most with, actually. I do feel that sense myself. In other areas, he says, um, I enjoy putting on fronts, and enjoy teaching, and making it seem like I'm a smart person on the outside, when inside I'm full of deceit and cunning, right? And that's what I feel. When I get up on the podium on Sunday services, that's what I feel as well. I don't feel like I'm in a position of being able to tell, about the Buddha Dharma, these kinds of things, right? And so uh, there are many other places in which he's kind of brutally honest with himself, but those are all the parts that I enjoy reading. And I feel like he's talking about blind passions as this abyss that never ends, right? But that abyss, though, becomes those blind passions become the very source of his inspiration, of his joy, right? And so the common example that's given is if you could imagine like a Kingsford piece of charcoal, that we use for like barbecues and stuff like that. This piece of charcoal is pitch black. It's very opaque, right? You can't see through it, and it's dark, and it makes all these smears and all these things and leaves behind all these marks. But all it takes is one little spark that ignites it, and when it ignites, it burns bright. And the darker it is, the brighter it burns. And that's what Shinran Shoni is trying to talk about. That the more blind passions that he realizes, the more blind passions are those seeds of the source of his happiness arise, and in realizing how much it is that he is embraced. And I feel that's kind of the way that I would approach this question, which is to say no, but in a good way, is the way that I would answer that question.
Okay. Yeah, I like that metaphor of, well, the usual one, isn't it? The ice and water. The greater the ice, the blind passion, greater the water, the enlightenment.
Yeah, it's very
By the way,
powerful.
yeah, when you were talking about your dark side and giving Dharma talks, and I just the question is, do you feel uneasy when your wife is in the audience?
Absolutely. Yeah. Those questions, those topics get avoided. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's yeah. Well, anyway, okay. We can probably talk about that more. The third question is, how do the afflictions or blind passions affect my ability to become fully enlightened in this life?
Yeah.
Fully enlightened. Fully
Right.
enlightened. Yeah,
Right.
that's the Buddhahood. Yeah.
Yeah. I think, what helps me to understand this is there's the perspective of the Buddha, and then there's the perspective of the sentient being. Buddhahood, I think one of the ways that we can define it, among many ways to look at it, is to say that it is to see things as they are, to be able to see things for what they are, as they are. And the sentient being, however, is a person who cannot see things as they are. We use our glasses of blind passions to look through a lens of egocentricity to look at the entire world. So everything that we look at, whether it's this cup of coffee to, the book that I read to the movie that I choose to watch, is all based on this lens. Is it good to me, or is it not good to me? Do I like it, or do I not like it? Is it beneficial to me, or is it not of benefit to me? And these kinds of things, right? So we judge these things based as good or bad based on how they are in relation to our wants and needs. And so to not see that then, or to not be bogged down by our blind passions then, is to see things as they are. So these blind passions do hinder our ability to attain Buddhahood, and that's the way that I would answer that.
Okay. All right, let's go to the fourth one. Is Shinran says that our afflictions continue to emerge throughout our lives, but can we lessen the negative impact in our daily lives?
I think the way that I would approach that, and I'm sure that this isn't an answer that people want to hear, is yes and no. I would say that it's no in the sense that, as I mentioned earlier, the abyss never ends, right? And so there's when we're going from one blind passion, we're then going to go to the next blind passion, and then when we feel like we've settled one, then we're going to go to the next one, but then the one that we thought we settled would arise back up. And this is the understanding of retrogression that Shinran struggled with. And that's why defining Shinjing as this non-retrogression was a big deal for him. And so I think that that's the abyss that we sense. So in that sense, I would say that we can't lessen it. But then on the flip side to that, I think we can lessen it. And Sharon's kind of, I kind of want to kind of agree with Sharon. What she said here is that I think, when we view the blind passions, when we realize and awaken to the blind passions that we have, I think that that's half the battle. When we recognize what the blind passions are for what they are, then we can think about how it is that we can deal with these blind passions and what we do in response to those blind passions. Sensei, I was finally able to get a chance to see you and Stephen Batchelor's the video. I thought that was such a great. There's so many insightful points there. And one of the things that Bachelor Sensei mentioned was this, or you and Bachelor Sensei was talking about, was this non-reactive space, where that, the blind passions, we see it, and then what do we do next? There's that space of recognizing that blind passion for what it is, and then what do we do in response to knowing that that's there? And I think that in that sense, then the answer is yes. I think we can try to lessen it, to mitigate it as much as we can, and to endeavor to do so. The example that I like to give is, the teacups at Disneyland. We have the teacups, the platform is moving, and these teacups, when we're on them, they can move if you move that center console around, right? And some people, want to turn that dial and get a real kick out of, getting dizzy and these kinds of things. But as you get older, you have less and less of a tolerance for these kinds of things, and so you don't want the teacups to move as much as possible. And so we try to slow the spinning of the teacups as much as possible, despite the fact that it will still move because the bottom platform is moving. And that to me is is the human condition. But I think there are ways that we can try to slow or to mitigate the spinning, as opposed to before.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well,
yeah.
I love that metaphor, and that is original. You're original, right?
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
So someday down the road, 100 years from now, they may talk about that metaphor, and
Great.
I think it's really great. But I want to ask you regarding this, your initial anecdote of getting upset at the guy who was, blinking, doing the headlight. How, well, when it happens again, how would you, what would be your reaction? Are you going to be the same, or will you be able to do better?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, I'm not sure. Yeah, but hopefully I can. Hopefully I can recognize, this has happened before, and getting angry actually only takes away from my day, and it just frustrates me to no end, and there's no actual resolution to it. And so it would just be better just to let it go. Hopefully that part of me will kick in the next time that this does happen, because after all, it's the Bay Area. It will happen again. So yeah.
So as I was saying earlier, when Sharon was talking about her thing, and that emotion seems so real, and but again, from the Buddhist standpoint, it goes away, and so but yeah, maybe we will succeed in doing better, and maybe we not. But I think that I think it's important for us to try to make the effort to make it better for yourself, and also for people around you.
Right.
And with the Dharma, it gradually makes that more possible. In my view. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think, it's a lot of this is kind of, talking about this issue of blind passions is to recognize, the limitations that we have. But it's, with that understanding, do we then give up and not do anything? Or do we then use that to inform us in terms of what do we do next? And I think I would like to think that the latter is the option that I would take.
Yeah. Well, I fully agree. I just think we need to emphasize that more, because I think with traditional Shinshu teaching, we tend to go right away to, well, we're all passion-filled, ignorant beings. There's nothing we can do about it. We're like this till the end of our lives. But I think we need to build up how we deal with things in our everyday life, and that we need to have more innovation, more openness to work in this area, because we have such a great teaching with regard to Shinjin and life after death, but here and now will require more attention, especially for contemporary people. I think the religion, the so-called religiosity of the past, when more people are concerned about life after death, has changed, where we have more wherewithal to do things in this life, and we live longer, and we have more issues, and so okay, and I think finally, as you said, the half the battle is to realize that about yourself, and to notice it when it happens. Yeah. Okay, thank you. So the last question has to do with, in your view, how are afflictions or blind passions in Buddhism differ from sin in Christianity?
Yeah. Yeah. How is it different from sin? Let me just gather my thoughts here.
By the way, there was a Boy Scout gathering in Jamboree, and a Shin Buddhist group, they all had their banners in front of their desk, and then misspelled, I think this was in Japan, they were Shin Buddhist group, they spelled it S-I-N Buddhist.
Sin Buddhist group.
Shin
Very
Buddhist.
cool.
And I think,
Yeah, thank you. I think when I along with Sharon too, I myself have a very limited understanding of Christianity. And just kind of going back based on what I've been told and what I've seen. And it seems to me that sin is something to be avoided in Christianity. It's something to be I think Tanaka Sensei, you mentioned this too last week when we were talking, is that it's something that we need to avoid, whereas blind passions is something we can't avoid. And I agree with that. I think blind passions is the human condition. To realize blind passions is to awaken to the humanity that we see in ourselves. And what shows us is the Buddha Dharma. And I think, when we awaken to that humanity within ourselves, we see that humanity in other people. And that's, I think, kind of something that I see as being kind of crucial for me in terms of being a Jodo Shinshu Buddhist. This might go a little bit off topic, but when I was a young kid, maybe around 10 years old or so, I had a classmate, a very studious, very smart kid, always got good grades, very straight-laced, followed all the rules. And this kid one day comes to me and says, what religion are you? And I said, oh, I'm Buddhist. And he said, you know that you're going to hell, right? And he said that with a straight face, like just as a matter of fact, this is what's going to happen to you. You know that, right? And like that it really messed me up. And all throughout high school, all throughout college, I was thinking about, why does he say that? Why would he say that to me? I've never done anything bad to him. And I didn't really, I was really kind of taken aback by that. And I think that, actually now in retrospect, when I look at that incident, it's helped me in a lot of ways. So I don't have any disdain or, ill will towards that person. But, I think that, that's where kind of Shinshu kind of does not subscribe to that idea. Rather than the ideas of judgment, strictness, expectation, I think there's more of this idea of harping on the idea or emphasizing the idea of kind of forgiveness, tolerance, and acceptance, of other people, and that, we're all trying our best, we're all in the same boat, trying our best and trying to make it. And people are going to have their different take on things. That's based on their karmic backgrounds. And that's the Jodo Shinshu approach, and that's something that I find great comfort in this tradition.
Well, I can relate to that incident that you had. I was in the Buddhist Christian dialogue session a number of years ago. All kind of liberal Christians and
Mhm.
liberal Buddhists, and we had a discussion on that very topic. Can I be saved as a Buddhist? And I was talking to my dialogue partner, and she was a a good friend, and she's quite liberal in my opinion, but from a strict doctrinal point, I asked, and she says, "Can I be saved as a Buddhist?" She says, "I'm sorry, no."
Mm, mm,
And
mm,
and
mm.
and I was, I knew people felt that way, but when it came from her, although she personally didn't want to feel that, but doctrinally, that was her. She could not help but to take that position. And I said to her, I said, I wouldn't feel that about you.
Mm, mm, mm.
And,
Yeah,
honestly, I mean, who am I to judge whether, and I wish the best of everyone in, their respective religions. Hope you be
right,
saved.
right,
To
right.
say, emphatically, no,
Mm.
that is something is alien to me. And
Right, right.
right. Okay. All right. We have reached the 30 minutes or so, and so now you have a chance to ask Sensei and make comment about what he has to say. And
Ken, should we go back to Paul?
oh,
He had a question.
yeah, okay. Hey, Paul, do you want to ask the question? I know you was in the previous. You're muted. You're muted.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes,
We
yes,
can hear you
wonderful.
all the way from Europe.
I got it.
He's the only person from Europe for others.
Exactly.
It's middle of the
Yeah,
night.
we've seen each other at the Jodo Shinshu conference some months
Yes,
ago in Europe.
yes, yes, yes. Good to see you again.
Yeah, good to see you too. I would like to ask about the reality of the Pure Land with all the ponds and the jewel trees. What's about this? Uh, Reverend David Matsumoto said one of the most important things he ever heard was when he had an older lady. She was teaching him, and she said to him, "I will see my husband again in the Pure Land." Is this a reality when samsara is illusional, but samsara is here? Is the Pure Land as real as samsara if we want it in that expression with the ponds and with everybody comes together happily? And what's with people from other religions? Can I meet my parents who are not Buddhist, for example, later on in the Pure Land, or visit other from the Pure Land other heavens or something like that? Or is this absolutely absurd? I don't know how to think about this, but yeah, this was what attracted me to Pure Land Buddhism, this whole heavenly thing too.
Thank you. Yeah. I'm sorry, did you want me or Sharon to answer that question?
No, probably you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I recall one of my teachers told me, he said that he got asked the same question. And he said, Miyaji-kun, Miyaji-kun is deep low voice. If you can't say yes to that answer, you have no right being, or you have no place being a minister. The answer to that question is an emphatic yes, that you will see that person in the Pure Land, because the Pure Land is that which is the transcendent world that is beyond the world of samsaric existence. It is reality as such. And so that is the world that we go to. It is the world of absolute truth, right? And it's just a matter of time, whether it's this life, the next, or thereafter. And so that seeing that person in the Pure Land, I mean, Shinran Shonin has made references to this in his letters. And then in the one of the last passages in the Kyogyo Shinsho, in his magnum opus, in his major work, he says that that those who will go before us will teach and guide us, and then those who come after will go on later to the Pure Land. And this cycle will continue until the cycle of birth and death is exhausted, and so everybody's going to make it. And so this is like that movie Backdraft, that back in the late 80s or the early 90s. There's that one final scene where like the protagonist and the antagonist. The protagonist has the antagonist's hand, and the antagonist, I forget his name, but he's about to drop in a pit of fire and he could be saved. But the antagonist realizes all the bad that he's done, and he says, "Just let me go, just let me go." Right? And then the good guy, he says, or it's Kurt Russell, I think he's the protagonist in the movie, and he says, "You go, we go." Right? And so that is the bodhisattva ideal, right? Everyone has to make it. And that is the understanding. Everybody will make it. And the reason why everybody will make it is because everybody is already embraced within this world of absolute suchness, absolute oneness. And so the way that we Jodo Shinshu Buddhists describe that is through this depiction of the Pure Land with Amida Buddha and the 29 adornments, and the beautiful immaculate kind of descriptions that's described in the larger sutra. So I think that's the way that I would approach that question. I don't know if I've answered your question, but did you have any kind of thoughts regarding that?
Yeah, this was about what Reverend Matsumoto also said, and for me, this is emotionally a very important thing, because it gives some comfort, and I'm super scared of death. Who isn't? And yes, and scared of losing people, and yes.
Yeah, absolutely. For me too, as well. That was the whole reason why I got into this. And so that answer, when it was shared to me, it gives me a lot of comfort. I think that I don't know, in Jodo Shinshu circles, there is a real hesitancy to explain Buddhism in this way. And I think that comes from, this idea that there is a hesitation to want to sound like Christianity or some other different religion, right? But in my eyes, that's the way Shin Shonin has explained it, right? And why should we shy away from that? And it's written in the Kyogyo Shinsho, and it's written in his letters in that way. We should be proud of this heritage. We should be proud of that tradition, and we should explain it as it is. And so there will be people who will not like this, and they will walk away, and that's fine. But there will be people who will greatly appreciate this, and that's us being true to ourselves, and that's what we should do. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay. Any other dues? Is there any?
We have a question from Steve Terasaki. It's kind of lengthy here, but it says, I'd like to pursue a deeper understanding of the difference between Christian sin and Buddhist afflictions. Not raised Christian, but living in America in a Christian society, my understanding of sin is that it has a mindfulness about it, that it is done with an evil intent. I also feel that there is guilt associated with a sinful act. Using this understanding of sin, how is this same or different than Buddhist afflictions?
There's mindfulness about it. That's done.
Actually, Denise Quirk has responded. In response to Steve, I would like to point out that my lesbian daughter has experienced oppression and judgment from some fundamental Christians. They said she was sinning. Our was raised as Christians.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of how I would. Yeah, Kubota Sensei, I see her.
Okay. Reverend Kubota, you want to unmute yourself?
Okay. For me, the distinction, if you want to make a distinction anyway, is that sin is external. It's a judge, that the theist, the theology of it is judging it. Whereas affliction, that's a personal dilemma that we're dealing with internally through our own conscious or unconsciousness, ignorance. So I think that's a basic contrast, that, the judge of, the God or theist or idea is the issue there. Whereas in afflictions, we're having to deal with that internally.
And
oh, great. Thank you.
yeah, it's also in the Buddhist sense, it's something, as I said earlier, that it's as Reverend Kobara said, it's personal, meaning that it's something that one comes to realize through one's effort to try to become a Buddha, to become to reach the highest goal of Buddhism. And it's a self-realization, and it's not something that is imposed upon you by someone else saying you are that or you are this. And so there's that aspect of it.
And then also that, even Shinran using Shinran's quote is, who am I to say what I know? If I knew as well as Amida, then I could say what is good or what is bad. So I think that, again, that's kind of not putting the thing on others, which sin tends to do. That's why the family that's having to deal with these kind of folks that presume to speak the truth of God can make those judgments on other people.
Thank you.
So
Yeah.
I think Buddhist affliction is more dealing with our own stuff.
Right. Yeah, I think just to kind of jump off of that too, with sin, it seems to me that there is a criteria, that a standard that is set, that is imposed on all individuals, and that you have to meet that criteria. And if you're not meeting that criteria, you're sinning. Whereas in terms of blind passions, the root of this is egocentricity. It's ignorance, basically, and that from there spawns then suffering that's imposed on other people, or suffering that's imposed on the self. But it's primarily a personal issue, right? It's primarily an internal issue that's happening. And so one of my teachers told me that Buddhism is, in the beginning and at the end, through and throughout, it is a religion of introspection. It is a religion about, regarding the self, right? And that might sound counterintuitive in terms of the sense of, I should be using this religion to inform me of how I should help society and help other people and all these things. But it's Buddhism is this understanding that you can't help other people unless you first help yourself. You're incapable of helping other people unless you first help yourself. It's just like, being on an airplane, and they have the safety instructions, and they say that when those oxygen masks come down, that you should place yours on first before you can place even your own child's mask. And because you can't begin to save them in a real dire situation of emergency. You can't hope to save other people unless you first put that mask on yourself. And it's the same situation. You can't begin to help other people unless you first help yourself. And that's the Buddhist approach to this, and with the idea of blind passions as well. And to kind of also additionally talk about Steve Takashi-san's about notion of guilt. I think there's an element of, in Jodo Shinshu Buddhism, through the two aspects of deep realization, Nishi Jinshin in Japanese, there is an aspect of shame, and then there is an aspect of joy. And so all the things that I've been talking about, I get mad and I want to flip the person off if they cut me off on the road, to I have notions of greed, to sexual desire, and these kinds of things. I have this sense of shame that comes about, right? But Jodo Shinshu Buddhism does not end on a self-deprecating note. It doesn't end with this idea of beating yourself up and feeling bad about who you are and these kinds of things. With shame, there is always joy, and that sense of equilibrium there is crucial in understanding Shinran's thought on this understanding of faith and entrustment. And so it's not this, when we talk about faith and joy in our tradition, it's not this jumping for joy, like, this religious high kind of thing, but it's this, when we have moments of joy, we also sense this sense of shame that we are limited individuals who have blind passions, and that we can't rid them. But then it's also not this idea of always being in a state of depression, that we have this joy that brings us up and brings us in this emotional state of equilibrium. And I think that's something that needs to be pointed out too as well in terms of this discussion.
Okay. Thank you for those comments.
Oh,
Okay,
Then we have a question from
Jane.
Jane.
Yeah. Jane?
Okay. This is for Reverend Miyaji and maybe Dr. Tanaka and Sharon. It's about religion. Because I realized that because I was raised sort of Christian and then I turned into Buddhism. But you know, I thought religions basically is for the here and now. That what happens after we die, then I'm thinking right now, it doesn't matter. But then for Christians, I know I was brought up that unless, you know, I was baptized and confirmed, I won't go to heaven. Like my parents who are Buddhists weren't going to go with me. So I sort of turned it off. But now you're saying that, and maybe I'm putting words in your mouth, that it doesn't really matter, that according to Buddha, we're all going to go someplace, the Pure Land. Because I'm confused, because I thought maybe perhaps another way, so what if after we die, it's over, it doesn't matter? Or does it matter? Like is Hitler going to go to the same place as I am? Is the most terrible people going to be in the same place, regardless of whether they have a religion or not? Are we all going to go together, or is it just empty? We don't know. It's just emptiness. When we die, it's over.
Yeah, there's many important topics that come up in this. The idea of from the doctrinal standpoint, from Jodo Shinshu, there's the idea of, you know, transmigration, that this world of samsara continues. So I can't tell you that in your next life or Hitler in his next life is going to be a grasshopper or a lamb, or, you know, be born on some other universe on this planet and so on. So I can't say all those things, but the from a doctrinal standpoint, based on the person's karma, and that understanding, they will go to the place that they will go, and they remain in this world of samsara. It is through the awakening of this world of Alameda Buddha's wisdom and compassion, as we call it, this principle of this transcendent world, and this full entrustment within this world, or within that working, that brings us out of this this cycle of transmigration. And so the way that I understand that, to answer your question, is it does matter what you do in this life, and that what we do to awaken, to encounter this Buddha Dharma, is crucially important. And that you know, that's why we pursue the Buddha Dharma, and that's why we should continue on this path as Nembitsu followers. That's the way that I would approach it, and I'm sure that there are more questions than there are answers in terms of the way that I approach that. Yeah, just curious to see what Tanaka Sensei has to say, or Kobata Sensei or Sharon, regarding this.
Reverend Kobata, you have your hands up, so we don't have too much time, so
That's our life. We don't have too much time. But anyway, okay. Yeah, the thing is, I always try to point out that the Pure Land isn't the final destination that you go for eternity. Pure Land is where we go to awaken. And by that awakening, you know, the teaching of Shinran is we return. There's that phase that we return to this confusing, challenging, samsaric existence to help others. Because the bodhisattva spirit is always towards putting off our enlightenment for the sake of others. And so the idea of Pure Land is a bodhisattva spirit, that we go to awaken, but then that enables us to return to help awaken and guide others. So our those who have preceded us are returning to be able to help us awaken. And that's the process. So and when does it end? When all beings are liberated. And so it's a universal spirit. You know, that's why we call it the Hongan, the deepest wish of life, that all beings be happy, be awakened, be liberated from their afflictions. And so I think that's a key contrast that Pure Land isn't the final place of reward, so to speak, but it's a place of awakening. And that's the whole premise of Buddhism, in my view. But
Oh, no.
I'll give you this one final anecdote, because I always find it helpful if I have a, what do you call it, receptive audience. I think I don't use it any place, but it's a story involving Reverend, one of our colleagues, Reverend Sanan Kubose, the son of Gyome Kubose, who told the example, or I think it was a true experience he had, where one day somebody got in his face with that whole line of, if you don't accept so-and-so as your Lord and Savior, you're going to go to hell. And his response, as I heard the story, is, that's a good place for a Buddhist priest to be, so I can help others.
Yeah. Thank you, Sensei. Yeah, that aspect of returning is really important, and yeah, it's something that needs to be mentioned too as well. That the coming back to this world and to teach and guide other sentient beings is a crucial component of what we mean by the working of this Pure Land in this world of absolute truth. Yeah.
So thank you, Jane. I would say, I mean, you seem to be saying, I don't really care about life after death. And if that's so, that's fine. I think a religion, especially Buddhism, is a very personal appreciation. So, you don't need to be caught up with that because Shin Buddhism and all religions really also offer teachings for here and now in this life. So concentrate on that. That's what I would do. And if you're not concerned about what happens after, that's fine too. And you have to be true to yourself. But if you notice, there are others who are concerned about what happens after. But Shin Buddhism, in my opinion, offers a total package for here and now and hereafter. Okay, so thank you, and it's been again a wonderful session and thank you, Sharon, and thank you, Reverend Miyaji, for your participation. So with that, we'd like to conclude, but we have the Happy Nirvana Hour, or the Happy Wisdom Water session. So we take a 5-minute break, and if you like to come back.
Can I conclude the session?
Oh, yes. And then last time I forgot to let Reverend Nanjo conclude, and he's reminding me that I'm doing it again. My afflictions. I'm thinking about what I have to say. So good. I'm glad you asserted yourself. That's important too. It's also important. Okay. So, all right. Go ahead.
Okay, this concludes opening fireside chat for December. We hope that you find it instructive and meaningful. The link for the video will be sent to you in the next few days. We feel strongly that reviewing the video will enhance your learning as well as your ability to respond to the questionnaire. Again, please try to respond within 2 weeks, as the comments will be posted anonymously for us to gain greater insight to the many perspectives possible. If you still have questions or are interested in further discussions with our speakers, Ms. Sharon Sasaki and Reverend Dr. Takashi Miyaji, you will have the opportunity in a few minutes at our Nirvana Happy Hour. You are cordially invited to join us in what we call our Nirvana Happy Hour, where you may even bring your favorite wisdom water. The Nirvana Hour is strictly optional, so please do not feel obligated to join. For those joining, we will take a short 5-minute break. For everyone, see you at our next fireside chat on the theme of Shinjin, Saturday, January 27th for most of you, and Sunday, January 28th in Japan. Until our next class, please stay well and safe. Nirvana Happy Hour will begin in 5 minutes.
Come on.